The Jets are -9, or sorry, have 9 takeaways, second worst in the NFL. What is Robert Saleh doing? And as you said to me, well, for his defense, nothing, because he's a CEO head coach, and that's a problem.
Well, I know we both. I know you watched the Dan Lanning press conference, the new head coach at Oregon. I went and watched some of it. He had a great line that said, and you just say the word football, it gets him excited. Like, that's just
his heart rate. I think
it
gets his heart rate going.
Yeah, it gets his heart rate going. And I asked, like, did he mention that he was going to be the defensive coordinator? And we didn't, I don't think he actually said it. I know he was asked by his offensive coordinator. But then I started thinking, like, in college, it really is different. And, Urban has been a point of conversation over the last, really all season, but definitely since that story came out on Saturday, which, weird timing. Like, that story is a Sunday morning story, yet it came out on Saturday, kind of for a reason, it felt like. And CEO head coaches in college, you can really impact the team, right? Because you can recruit. So, yeah, there are a ton of CEO head coaches in college, all over the place. Like, probably ones that you don't even realize are, he does not call plays. Like DuBois. DuBois is not going to call plays for the Washington Huskies. And he's an offensive coordinator. But
he didn't do it for the Fresno State Bulldogs.
That's what I'm saying. He doesn't even need to do it. And it's like he just has it. We're in the NFL. We were talking about Saleh, and we've been talking about this the whole time. Kind of weird that just the moment he was hired, he just hired a defensive coordinator and said, like, I'm going to become a CEO. It's like, bro, you're not Warren Buffett. You're not Jamie Dimon of Chase Bank here. You're 41-year-old. 3 years ago, couldn't sniff a head coaching interview. Now you just become a CEO. And then we went and looked at like all the teams in the league that are having success, especially the NFC. Most of the coaches, right? LaFleur, boom, kicking ass, taking names. Play caller, head coach. McVay, play caller, head coach. I'd say Arians a little unique. Gave it up pretty recently. Lifetime, when he was kicking ass as a head coach, offensive coordinator, right? With some of those Carson Palmer teams. And it's transitioned to like become a mentor, and he has a mentee in Byron Leftwich. So it's understandable. And they have Brady. It's kind of a unique situation. McCarthy, I think, has taken a lot of shit because people are like, what are you actually doing? Like, Kellen's calling the plays. People keep saying, like, why don't just make Kellen the head coach if he's going to get jobs? Kyle Shanahan. Sirianni is a good example. The Eagles were in shambles early in the season, and then they've just kind of righted the ship, and they've played much better offense. You go, well, he's impacting the game. And you look at the AFC, right? I mean, Andy Reid, people act like he's not the offensive coordinator. He's the offensive coordinator. Now, I think, what's his name? Bieniemy calls some plays, but Andy Reid is running the game. He runs meetings. The Chargers, Staley is the defensive coordinator. The Indianapolis Colts, Frank Reich is the offensive coordinator. If I was an owner, I don't think I could, unless Mike Tomlin became available, I would not hire a coach, especially under 45 years old, that wanted to be a CEO. At least Dan Lanning, if he ultimately doesn't call defensive plays, a big reason they're hiring him, he's coming from a recruiting factory / one of the best recruiters in the country, Kirby Smart, and they take it very seriously, right?
Yeah, I do think he is viewed and this is to your point though, I do think he is viewed as a defensive, I'm going to talk in like overly flowery, a defensive wizard. Like, I think people think he was bound to be a head coach. And even though some people on the West Coast had to Google his name, the fact is he did not have to leave Georgia because he was the defensive freaking coordinator at Georgia. He wasn't going to leave. How much money
he was making a Georgia guy?
Yeah, he wasn't leaving to take the Nevada job. So whatever job he was getting was going to be because somebody said to him, hey, dude, we think you're a star. Let's make you a star head coach of this star program.
But Saleh is a good example. Last year, I mean, I have to do some. It felt like, just remembering off the top of my head, he was the number one candidate. And remember, he had, I think there were 7 opening jobs.
For the Jets or just in general the league?
Didn't he interview with 6 teams? Like, he was interviewing with everyone. Remember, he turned down the Eagles last minute for even an interview. Like, he could have taken a lot of. Maybe Arthur Smith would have been up there too as a guy that everyone was interviewing. But like,
yeah,
is it fair to say Robert Saleh was going to have multiple job opportunities?
Yes.
Well, these people offering him the job, I would not have allowed, like, Robert, I'm hiring you to be my defensive coordinator / the head coach. The reason you're getting hired is because you're coming from the 49ers. Because the guy you worked for is the head coach and the play caller. Like, Brandon Staley probably made Tom Telesco and Dean Spanos, well, part of it, they didn't have to pay him a premium rate. He was only a 1-year coordinator, so you get him a little cheaper. But when Brandon Staley goes, yeah, I'm going to call the plays. Don't you feel better as a general manager? It's part of the reason you're interviewing, because your defense is sweet. I can't fathom. I get it. Like, I've even convinced myself. In college, it's understandable because you can recruit the shit out of players, right? But when it's a double whammy, right, like Lincoln Riley, like Lincoln takes a lot of pride in recruiting and he's your offensive play caller. Isn't that like the equivalent of having Andy Reid as your head coach? It's like, my guy's my head coach. Everyone loves him as a leader, and he's my guy dialing up the plays, or Sean Payton, or something. Like, that's the ultimate. Like Nick Saban. If at any moment Nick Saban has to call the defense, Nick Saban can call the defense. Ryan Day. Ryan Day is the offensive coordinator, and he's a really good recruiter, and he's a good leader. People like him. Like, isn't that what the goal of getting a head coach? Now, like, for example, this year, Brian Daboll, let's just say he's going to make the interview route. Who knows? The Bills are kind of in shambles, but let's just use his name because he's already kind of in the mix. If I hire Brian Daboll, like, I want you to call the plays.
Not after what I've seen the last 2 weeks.
No, okay, Josh McDaniels. Like, if Josh McDaniels ever finally does take a job or takes over for the Patriots, wouldn't you want him to just keep making the offensive play calls? Isn't that part of his, like, attribute? And
I like, to me, I want you to do whatever your greatest strength is. Let's start with that and then work backwards. So what are your greatest strengths, right? Let's start there. And for Kyle Shanahan, as an example, calling offense is one of his greatest strengths. So let's start with that. Now, for you to be a head coach,
strength?
Yeah, sorry, it's his greatest strength. Now, for you to be the head coach, you have to be able to do more than that. But let's start by doing the thing you are best at and then adding to your plate instead of starting by subtracting the thing that you do best at and then trying to switch back and add to your plate. I mean, the best coaches can call one side of the football for the most part. Mike Tomlin hasn't had to, but I mean, it is what he did. He was a defensive coordinator. Now, for him, was Dick LeBeau there when he took over? He wasn't going to step in and coach defense as the defensive coordinator, right? So maybe if he had been the defensive coordinator when he got that job, it's probably a little different when you take over a bad team versus when you take over a good team, right? He took over a winning franchise. And so they're not so much looking for a jolt or that level of creativity on one side of the football. But I think when you take over a bad team, you have to take on more. We're going to bring you here to do the thing you do best, and you have to also manage the situation.
Stefanski.
Because what are you probably not going to have? The best players. Your team's bad. So we're going to need your coaching thing on offense or defense immediately. The Chargers, that was not the case. They were unique because they were not a great team, but they had talent, right? So I'm talking in generalities here. But I think for the most part, like a new coach, the first thing you're going to do, it's not going to be turn over the roster and have a bunch of good players on it. So we need that incremental thing that you do that gets the Niners from middle of the pack defense to top 2 defense. We could use that right away. We got a rookie quarterback. It'd be nice, defensively speaking of the Jets, if like you could just be pretty good. Not great, but just good enough that Zach Wilson isn't out there fighting for his life every week. I don't know. Maybe they'll get better players and that thing will work itself out. I wonder, listening to you talk, a lot of times with Cliff Kingsbury, we reference his Texas Tech history. Maybe Cliff's not a great GM. Maybe Cliff's not great at recruiting, identifying talent, signing those players, and getting the most out of them. Maybe he's better when somebody else says, Cliff, we're hiring you to do what you do offensively. We know how to fit to that. We're going to fit to that. We're going to get you good players. We think as a play caller, you're really good. But you think you're a good leader and CEO. You're just not a great GM. And he's not the GM there, right? Texas Tech, to his defense, now Leach did a great job there. Leach is the outlier. It's not exactly where you go to have players just come flocking to you, right? The Michael Crabtrees of the world don't end up in Lubbock more often than not. So I don't know.
He definitely can. I'll give him credit on this. I'm with you. It's hard to judge him on just the overall talent acquisition at the program. The position that matters the most to any college program, and definitely the NFL, quarterback, Baker Mayfield, Patrick Mahomes. He brought them both there. And Kyler, he fucking pounded the table for. He clearly, he can call plays, and he can definitely identify the quarterback coach.
If your greatest strength...
I'm coming around on him a little bit.
John, if your greatest strength is getting the most out of a quarterback and identifying quarterback talent, we can work with that.
Colt McCoy won a game with his backup.
Yeah.
Cliff's had a good season.
He's had a really good year. And maybe we'll look back. No, Texas Tech was not representative of what he was as a head coach.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. But when you just look, like Stefanski's a good example. Obviously, Cliff's a good example. I think Sirianni's a good example because it just kept that team afloat. Fangio's a good example. Like they're able to impact the game with their baby.
Is Fangio a good head coach?
You know they're 7-6.
I mean, he might just be a good head coach, John.
Well, here's what I know and I think Urban is the bar for just disaster, and the Texans, just a lot of teams that are just kind of a joke. One thing you can say about Fangio is he's not the general manager, so the quarterback position has been out of his control, right? I mean, and they've just only had so many options. They have not been an embarrassment in terms, no leaks, no he's over his head. They haven't won that much, but he's definitely stabilized the franchise, has he not? Like he's
feels
a real
like
coach.
their young players get to play and thrive. You wonder that sometimes with like an old school defensive guy, like is he going to be too hard on young players? Will young players be able to develop in their systems? Doesn't feel like that's a problem for them.
It's why I wonder, like, and listen, Matt Rule, I think is more equipped. If you said, John Guy, you guys own a team, you either have to hire Matt Rule or Urban Meyer. I know I would say, Guy, I think we should hire Matt Rule. I would. Now, Matt Rule also, like Urban, is a CEO. He doesn't call the offense. He doesn't call the defense. And unlike Fangio, they're 5-8. They're trending the wrong way. I think they play the Bucks this week. That's an L. How does he impact the game? Because like your rah-rah leadership skills, like that doesn't ultimately, like on Wednesday of the week, it's like, well, are we putting in plays that are going to work or not? Like it's, I'm a 30-year-old. I got a kid. I've been on 3 other teams. Like I'm coming prepared. I'm ready. I'm eating the right food. I'm fucking going to bed early in my sleep number. You don't need to give me Newt Rockne speeches. You just have to tell me, do I go to the 10-yard line or do I break it off at the 7? Where is that defensive player going to be? And that's where it's like he's dependent on Joe Brady. And same thing with Urban, like all his assistants.
Not anymore.
Where what is Kyle's thing? Hey, we're going to double move him there. He's telling the referee, get ready for the double move. He's going to PI him. I know because I've studied this corner last 7 games. He's going to grab his ass.
Yeah,
Matt Rule's like, go guys, let's go.
2 things on Matt Rule. One kind of a joke, and then one serious point. One, he spent 1 year in the NFL, and everyone talked about him like, he's an NFL guy. Matt Rule just trying to get back to the league. He spent a year as an assistant O-line coach, and Ed Baylor was like, I just hear Matt Rule's an NFL type. It's like, based on what? Since when?
An assistant O-line coach, right? Not even he didn't even lead the unit.
Now, there's the joke. Here's the serious thing. The difference between him and Urban. There's many differences, like national championship differences. But Rule coached at Baylor and Temple as a head coach. Urban obviously started at Utah, but his success came actually, I guess he started at Bowling Green, but his success came at Florida and Ohio State. I think you would put those in 2 different categories. Doing more with more is what Urban did, and doing more with less is what Matt Rule did. And I do think the doing more with more guys, it's probably a harder transition since you don't get to just pick the best players in the NFL like you do in college. So if we were sitting down and going back and forth, making a pro-con list, trying to decide which guy we hire, I'd say, well, one thing that Matt Rule would have for me is he coached at Baylor, he coached at Temple. These are not traditional powers. These are guys who more deal with the circumstances they have and try to make the most of them. Now, I know what you're going to say looking at your face. You're going to tell me that he went 7-5 at Temple.
No, I'm actually going to tell you because we talk. Yeah, because we were talking about Lanning on Sunday night about Dave Aranda.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we talk about Baylor like it's San Diego State or something. I just Googled it.
He had a major scandal that he took over.
No,
Bill O'Brien style.
Yeah, but starting in 11, my point is I think the program, 10, 8, 11, 11, 10, then they had the scandal, then 11 to 11. Like my point is, they have won since 2011, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 10 years they've had double-digit wins. Like I just
spent a lot of money. Big 12, ripe for winning. That's true. That's fair.
You're right.
Maybe that's not more than less, but
I think NFL teams value like a true NFL guy that probably would have made fun of Urban. Like this guy's a recruiter. Bill O'Brien, who was a true NFL guy, right? Had coached Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Like he had been a coordinator, much more than Matt Rule. But I do think they value when you go to a place in college Penn State, Sandusky, and you just handle it. Like that's you're just like crazy shit happens in the NFL. This guy can just handle shit. Matt Rule just handled shit at Baylor. He got credit for that.
Yeah.
Because you go, well, crazy shit's going to happen in the NFL. Can you just handle it? Like, what was the craziest thing Urban ever dealt with? Like, a player got caught with weed?
Yeah, I mean, I guess
Covered
the
up
Aaron
murders.
Hernandez, the Pouncey twins, weren't they kind of wasn't there a thing with them at
I think
Florida?
But when shit went south, he just left. That was part of the thing. He just picked up and left.
Some of it was created by him, it turned out.
I think
right?
most people would tell you a lot of it was.
So,
would you take Matt Rule? Is there a chance Matt Rule and Urban? Matt Rule just might be a nicer guy, but it's like they're both kind of over their head in the league.
There's that chance. I mean, his offensive coordinator thing is like if you're going to be the CEO, he took a risk in bringing Joe Brady from college, and it didn't work. Now he's had a lot of injuries. They missed on their quarterback decision was a bad one.
If you gave Matt Rule Trevor Lawrence, I feel like the Panthers would be much more competitive.
Granted,
their
better
team is better than the Jags.
Yeah, but he's been there. This is year 2, right? So he's had a year to build it.
Like
by the way,
contract.
I didn't have anywhere to mention this, so I'll mention it here in this conversation. Speaking of Kyle Shanahan, like one of the things we always talk about, this is a follow-up to our conversation about all his running backs getting hurt. All his running backs get hurt, but the good news, John, is that the run game is his area of expertise. Just to give you an idea of the injuries, the Niners have not had, there's not a running back on their roster that's been active for every game this year. So zero consistency at the running back position. That's abnormal. James Conner's been active for every game that the Cardinals have played. The Rams have had Sony Michel for every game. The Packers have had A.J. Dillon for every game, and Aaron Jones has only missed one. The Bucs have had Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones have missed a combined 0 games this year. Zeke, I thought he was hurt, but he's been there for every game. Tony Pollard's only missed one. So when you look at the best teams in the NFC, in terms of the standings, the Niners are a bit of an outlier as it relates to their running backs.
You know, Sneaky's been pretty good this year. Is Lenny? He had like a 60-yard run. I was just watched the first.
Looks like
half
Derrick
of the
Henry.
Bills game. He looked awesome. I was going to look up how many games he's played this year. He's
played every game.
He played them all.
Yeah,
I mean he's 8
as I
touchdowns.
said, him and Ronald Jones have played in every game.
I'm telling you, guy. Do you know what playoff Lenny does, and some of these other guys do? They just hand the ball off to him. I think the pitch toss play doubles the violence of a collision. And that is Kyle Shanahan's favorite fucking play. It used to be like, oh, what do the Shanahans do? Stretch zone, stretch zone. That was once a Shanahan staple, and it still kind of is. He likes to toss now more.
Well, I think you get more momentum as a running back if you're receiving a toss than if you're receiving a straight handoff. I think you probably do, right?
And I just think that
there's no, you don't have to, you just ball as opposed to having to take the handoff.
I wonder if part of it too, in space to the left, they just feel our huge advantages. We get Trent, Juice, and Kittle, which are such elite athletes that they can just locate guys in space. So it's double advantage us. Because why wouldn't you just do the stretch zone where you just run, you hand it off, and he just kind of goes toward the corner, and then he can cut it back.
The Peyton Manning?
But that used to be a Shanahan, like when Arian Foster, when Kyle was working for Kubiak, that's like their go-to play. Like that's the offense. Kyle's just like, let's expand this to make this even more violent because I don't need any of you guys. Like, doesn't he say that to these guys? Like, listen, I know you all are probably going to have CTE by the time you're 28, but I love this play.
All right, interchangeable running back number 5. If you could replace interchangeable running back number 4, please.
Okay, he's going to get these people killed.
Elijah, you're going to be great until I replace you in a year and a half.
Elijah's like, well, Kyle, I've already had multiple concussions. I have a finger that now points toward Hawaii, and my knee's fucked up. I am a rookie.
So will you be good for the postseason? I need to know. Or will you be
Think
back
about
for the
that.
wild card game?
Elijah Mitchell in his rookie season, and he has been a stud. Shattered finger, fucked up knee, multiple concussions.